Hello and welcome to Integrative Guidance. If you're new to the channel, my name is Julia Swartz. I am a parapsychotherapist with 25 years experience in integrating modern psychology and psychological practices and also integrating in ancient healing arts. Right now we're focusing on tarot and numerology. We'll do a little bit of astrology, and as we move forward, we'll do more with chakra releases and mindfulness and all of the ancient healing arts. In today's video, we are going to focus on the number 10 in our series of looking at the minor arcana. And we're going to also look at afterwards the Aries energy. There's a lot of changes right now with Aries. At the time of this filming, it is the first day of the new moon in Aries, and we'll really dig into that. That's going to cause folks to have all kinds of physical and emotional reactions to it, depending on where these planetary alignments are for you in your natal chart. And we could talk about how to figure that out. And then I will talk about some very practical psychological skills and tools that you can use to manage this difficult time. This will be the first of my longest videos in an effort to continue to bring these things together. Thank you to all of you who like and subscribe. Please reach out if you want to set up a reading with me at inguide, INGUIDE, 321@gmail.com. You can also communicate with me through the YouTube link. So thank you for all of you for watching and paying attention and supporting the channel. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to start with the 10 of Pentacles. So the 10 of Pentacles, there's the card for you. Just want to make sure it's not too blurry there. Shows us Virgo. You can see the little glyphs here and Mercury, right? Oh, sorry, let's get that in there. So this card represents inheritance and wills and legacies and passing on financial wealth. The 10s are culmination cards, right? So this is about someone who's worked very hard to amass financial wealth and a home and things that they're passing on to their next family members, because the number 10 is about a culmination, right? It's a level change. So it's a 1 plus the 0. So as we've talked about in numerology, things go in cycles: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now we're at the level change of a 10. And inheritances demonstrate that. It's passing something on to the next generation. This was the Rider-Waite card. The next one I'll show you is in the Conley deck, and I will be introducing more decks to look at those images as well, because the symbology is a bit different. So in the Conley deck, we can see an older gentleman looking at some adult children and some grandchildren. He's in a beautiful robe and clothes, and we can see that he's amassed wealth and looking to his family to bring those on. Right? And so, like every card, it has its upside and its shadow side. And so when it comes to inheritances, oftentimes these can bring out the worst things in people. People get petty. They start to fight about things and stuff. Again, a reminder that Pentacles are an earth sign. So it's our stuff, our things, our job, our money, right? And so in those instances, sometimes families come together. They share the resources. Other times it creates a lot of backbiting and very difficult dynamics. And so these culminations, when there are inheritances involved, typically bring out the best in people or the worst in people. And so this is connected in the psychological world to something called family systems theory, which comes out of systems theory. So systems theory looks at the ways in which systems are interconnected. And if you change any one piece of that system, systems like homeostasis, and they want to come back into balance, right? And so if one part of that system is trying to change something within a system, it tries to get pulled back, and it can make difficult times to try to make change. So we can put this in the real world. Let's say we're looking at the system of our solar system. If one of the planets were to be off balance or to be removed, right, the gravitational pulls are interconnected with each one of those energy sources and each one of those planets. Change one, the whole system changes. The same thing is true with our biology, which is a system. If something's off, right, everything is interconnected and things hurt in different places. Even though maybe you hurt your lower back, you might notice it in your shoulders or your hip or your knee, because everything's interconnected, right? The same thing is true in a family. And in family systems theories, one of the big theorists is Bowen. What we know is that people take on particular roles in families. And if one piece of that family dynamic tries to change, oftentimes for the better, the old family system and ways of doing things pulls them back. You may notice this if you return to a large family gathering for holidays and, you know, there's that cousin that you always had this annoying relationship with, and before you know it, you're 12 again and you're bickering about something silly, right? And you find yourself getting caught up in those old dynamics, and on the ride home you think, oh, how did I let that happen? How can I be back here again? These are examples of family systems theory. And so sometimes if someone is engaging in therapy or mindfulness, or they're on a journey to improve themselves, they find that the system might not like that. Maybe people give them negative comments. Maybe people say, what are you saying that for? That sounds odd, or I'm not comfortable with that. And if that person consistently stays in that new place with the skill set that they've learned, eventually the whole system will change to adapt. And so that's how family system theory works. And I think it's particularly demonstrated in that 10 of Pentacles around level changes, culminations, inheritances, and what happens sometimes when things are passed on. And again, it tends to bring out the best in people, or it can bring out the worst in people. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the 10 of Swords. So a reminder that Swords is an air sign. It has rulership over our cognition and our thought and our ability to problem solve and think. It has rulership over executive functioning, which is our ability to look into the future and look at objectives and plan goals and think about the consequences of our choices. Swords also has rulership over the law. So in the Rider-Waite deck, we have the Sun, the center of our solar system, and we have Gemini, right, which is also an air sign, rules communication. And so you can see in this picture, there's a figure lying down with 10 swords in their back, right? This card can be about betrayal and backstabbing. The Conley deck has a very different image of the 10 of Swords. Here's a figure that looks like a woman, all alone. The swords are facing away from her, and she's surrounded in light, right? So in one image, it looks like the source of the backstabbing, the defeat, the exhaustion, the depression is sort of coming from the outside and being done to us. And in the image with the Conley deck, it looks more like it's an internal process, right? So this card could be about depression. It can be about the way that we think about things, right? We've been talking about how our thoughts affect our mood, and our mood affects our behavior. Are our thoughts fear thoughts? Are they real thoughts, right? This is a culmination card. Are we afraid of change? Did people need to stab us in the back in order to shove us and move us forward for us to say, this doesn't work anymore, because it felt comfortable, so we stayed there because we were too afraid to make a change? Or is it more internal? Is the way we think about change and the next chapters in life and what we need to do next, is that what's working against us? So depending on whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, I'll talk much more about adapted versions of the Myers-Briggs. I'll talk a lot more about Jungian theory. Very few people know that the theories of personality that Jung developed are all based on astrology. The Jungian Institute in Switzerland, I want to talk about that, right? But as I've talked about in the past, Carl Jung was known as a mystic. And so we'll talk a lot more about how his theories and astrology play into personality typing. If you're interested in having a personality typing reading done, again, reach out. We can do that. We can also apply that to your natal chart and also to tarot as well. And so this is just a reminder to think about, do we fear change? Are we putting up our own roadblocks to not allowing ourselves to go to the next level? Swords also represent our lessons, right? And our lessons show up sometimes in difficult manners. Our lessons, our life lessons, don't always show up in a pretty box with a bow on it. Sometimes we have to be bit in the back end to move us forward. So that's the 10 of Swords. Okay, now we're going to look at the 10 of Cups. And this is represented by Mars and Pisces. So we see in this card a rainbow. Cups represent water and emotions. We see a happy family. It can represent marriage, stability, right? In the Conley deck, it's two figures who are looking at each other lovingly. There's a rainbow, the 10 cups, and it looks like maybe there's an angel sitting above the rainbow looking down on these people, right? So this is a wonderful positive emotion card relative to family. And so this card reminds us that when things are going well, when we feel connected, when we're happy, when we're having those wonderful family moments, stop, pay attention, suck it in like a sponge, right? We pay attention to the pebble in our shoe. We pay attention when things aren't going well, right? Because the brain is wired to pay attention to what makes us angry and what makes us scared. That's a primitive response in the brain to keep us alive, right? It's connected to our limbic system. It's connected to the vagal nerve. It's connected to having us pay attention to that fight, flight, or fawn response, right? But our modern brain does not know the difference between something that's frustrating and something that's actually life-threatening, right? So we pay attention to those things. It keeps us coming back to those things. So we need to use our cognition and our thoughtfulness and our ability to analyze, swords, to pay attention to, is this a real thought? Is it a fear thought? Am I getting sucked into paying attention to things that make me scared and afraid, right? Separating us through fear works for larger systems, right? Works for the oligarchy, works for those who are in power. Because if we're fighting with each other, we're not looking at where the money's going and where the power is. So when you are happy, when you have those moments of joy and bliss, stop, pay attention, notice it, revel around in it, take it in, have gratitude for it. Don't take it for granted and don't expect to be happy. Happy is one emotion in our myriad of negative, neutral, and positive emotions, right? It's only one of them. Do not expect to be happy. Sometimes if we're having things in our lives that aren't going well and our emotions are negative, it's because that's a life lesson we've asked ourselves to learn, right? And if there's roadblock after roadblock about something that we're trying to pursue, that's the universe letting us know you're not supposed to go in that direction. I've experienced this both personally and professionally with many of the clients that I've worked with. When we shift directions and say, okay, that doesn't work, I'm going to try this. Literally, gifts, opportunities, people are laid in our feet. And I have experienced that myself, very much so in my life. So the message with the 10 of Cups is happiness, family, children, solid marriages and relationships, stability, and enjoy that when it shows up in your life. Okay, next we're going to look at the 10 of Wands. And a reminder that Wands is a fire sign, right? And so it's connected to spirit and our higher self. Wands are positive growth and change. It's action oriented, very much connected to Mars and very much connected to Aries. And we're going to dive into that in a second. Okay, so the signs connected to this card are Saturn and Sagittarius. And this card, we can see a figure who is holding up the 10 wands. This is another one of these cards that I will ask people to look at, and depending on what they see is also a reflection. Do you see somebody building something? Do you see somebody burdened by the weight and holding it up, right? This card typically is about feeling burdened, stressed, problems, burnout, feeling overloaded, feeling burnt, just, kind of fried, right? We see Saturn and Sag, and these two, this planet and sign, not necessarily aligned really well, right? Because Saturn is a restricting energy. It can be a building energy because it is connected to Capricorn, right? It gets some earth energy going on there. But Sag wants to go, right? It wants to shoot that arrow. It wants to move in a direction. And Saturn says stability, slow down, build the foundation first. So it can be hard energies to connect together. In the Conley deck, we see a figure. It looks like it's fall, and it looks like the figure is planting. We see the wands, we see the fall leaves, we see him planting maybe what looks like an acorn, right? So this card in particular is reminding us to be patient and that things are a process. And while we can plant in the fall, at least here in New England, it takes a long time to see the fruits of that labor. So we can plant garlic, we can plant tulips and daffodils and crocuses and any kind of bulb. However, it's going to go from the fall through the winter and into the spring. And particularly with garlic, we're not going to harvest that till the end of June, the beginning of July, depending on how that went. And I will take you all back out into the garden again for those of you who came on that journey for April Fool's Day. Probably will do that again around the 1st of May so that you can see how much things have grown in that month. And a lot of the cold crop plants that I've put out there. Again, I'm a Capricorn. I love to dig in the dirt. It makes me super happy. Because I'm an earth sign, but also because, as it turns out, there are enzymes in the dirt and in the soil and microorganisms that we breathe in. They go to the pleasure center of our brain. They turn on all our happy hormones. So yes, I am communing with nature. I am communing with earth, air, water, fire to co-create plants and food and fruits. And it's sort of instinctually hardwired into me for that to be my happy place, right? And then my ascendant or rising sign, which is based on the time of day that we're born, is Cancer, which is ruled by the moon, which is about emotions and intuition. And so I'm in the business, Capricorn, of nurturing people. That's how it works for me. And that particular combination is repeated over and over again in my natal chart. We'll talk more about how that might work for you. And so this card really reminds us to be patient, not give in to our anxiety if something doesn't feel like it's happening fast enough, to sit with and tolerate what it feels like to feel anxious, awkward, and uncomfortable. We don't have to react and we don't have to respond to it. Again, fear thoughts versus real thoughts. And sometimes if there's something that we want to plant or grow in our life, we have to be patient with the process and divine timing. We don't always get to choose when these things happen. They happen when they happen. However, we do want to be thoughtful. We want to set our goals and our intentions. We want to align our beliefs and our emotions with where it is that we want to go, right? Oftentimes people will say, a celebrity or a CEO or a musician, right? Boy, they were lucky. The definition for me of luck is hard work and opportunity, because opportunities will come. Are you going to take that leap of faith? Remember the Fool card, right? To walk through that door. Are you going to leap off the precipice? Are you going to do that? I've had to do that for myself in my own career several times and just take the leap. And now the leap for me is leaving traditional psychotherapy, leaving my titles, leaving a lot of the things that I've built up over the years, right? Leaving things connected to structures, being a professor, being a clinical director, being at the top of my game, being all of those things, walking away from that to embrace this work, which really resonates for me and is demonstrated in the work with the people that I work with, right? So I could do years of psychotherapy. If I blend in these ancient healing arts, it can be weeks or months. Sometimes it's one session, depending if we're going into the Akashic records. For those of you who don't know, the Akashic records are the records of all things from the beginning of time to the end of time. And in the Akashic records are what we've asked ourselves to learn in this lifetime. And one of the things that I offer to people is to blend together their personality and their temperament in this particular lifetime, because baked into that are strengths and challenges. Are we learning the life lessons we asked ourselves to learn? It's in the Myers-Briggs, it's in our natal chart, it's in the Akashic records. Are you on track? And so that's another thing, another kind of reading that we can do to blend those things together. Okay, so those are the things that we wanted to talk about around the tens and the culminations to the next level. And one thing that particularly resonates for that right now is all of this Aries energy that we have going on right now. So let's talk about Aries. Aries is the beginning. It's the spring. It's the beginning of everything in astrology. And so I talked a while ago that on March 20th, Aries, so Saturn went into 0 degrees of Aries. And so, hold on, I want to double check that. I want to make sure that's accurate. Hold on. Okay, so I want to be accurate. So for those of you who are not familiar with astrology, this will sound like gobbledygook. However, right now, Mercury, Mars, Neptune, Saturn, the Sun, and Chiron, which represents our wounded healer, are all in the sign of Aries. So Neptune is a dissolving energy, and Saturn represents all of our structures. So our structures are starting to dissolve. You likely have noticed this if you're paying attention to what's going on geopolitically. Things are very, very unstable. And the structures in the world that we have known it up to this point are being dissolved so that they can be rebuilt in a new way, new beginnings for the better good, okay? So let's get back to Aries in particular. So Aries, the little phrase for Aries is I am, because it's the beginning. It represents the head and the physical body. The glyph looks like a ram, again, the head, the horns, right? And so the best parts of Aries is connected to forward-moving energy. The planet that rules Aries is Mars, the red planet, right? Mars is fiery energy. And at its best, it can move us forward. We can set goals. It has rulership over athleticism and the martial arts, which is the perfect blending of physicality and athleticism and spirit. Because the highest octave of fire is spirit and our connection to spirit. Those are the positive parts of Aries. The shadow side or difficult side of Aries is that it has rulership over anger, irritability, war, frustration. And so with all these planets in Aries right now, you could be feeling super irritable, easily set off, annoyed, frustrated, and not even knowing why. You might just feel this way and think, I don't know why. Things are going pretty well. I don't know why I feel this way. Because internally, this is what's going on. And so depending on where all these planets sit in your natal chart, for me, it's in my 10th house. The 10th house is ruled by Capricorn. It's about my career. And my career is changing. I'm moving in the ways that I've described to all of you into this world of blending the traditional psychotherapy with these ancient healing arts. And so depending on your natal chart, depending on where Aries sits in your chart in that particular house, that's where all of these planets would fall for you. There are free apps that you can use to do your natal chart. If you have the date, time, and place of your chart, you can also just plug it into AI and ask, where are all the planets in Aries? What house do they sit in for me right now? And it will tell you that. Again, if you want to set up a time to chat about that, we could do that as well. I can also refer you to folks that I'm very near and dear with, folks that I've studied astrology with many, many, many years ago, who are now professional astrologers. I studied astrology and tarot for 5 years. I've kept up with it somewhat. I refer to myself as a middle schooler in astrology, in all honesty. However, I can refer you to folks who are amazing at this. If that's something that you're super interested in, you can message me around that or send me an email. So we really want to focus on maximizing this this Aries energy, right? We really want to use it to our advantage. So let's continue to talk about Aries. So the higher level of Aries is I will. It's about moving forward. It's about our higher self. It's about spirit. And it's about connecting to source, right? The universe, God, that higher level of energy. So when you feel off in this way, there are some very practical things that you can do to self-regulate, right? So this is what's referred to as somatic experience intervention. And there's reams and reams of data to support how it works for anxiety, for generalized anxiety disorder, for panic, for post-traumatic stress disorder, and other ways in which anxiety can land in our body, right? So when we're feeling anxious, what happens is our amygdala, which sits back here in the back of our brain, gets flooded with stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, and catecholamine. And what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to elicit the relaxation response, which is where we engage all of our positive hormones and neurotransmitters in our brain, right? So that's serotonin, that's dopamine, that's oxytocin. Those are the things that we want to turn on in our brain. And we do this, right, through a couple of different models. We've talked in the past about cognitive behavioral therapy. So when you have a thought, the first thing you want to ask is this a real thought? Is this a fear thought? Right? And then we want to pay attention to what are called cognitive distortions. It's ways that we think that are not based in reality. So for some people, this can kick in with you feel it viscerally in your body. Your anxiety lands in your body. Your chest is tight. Your palms are sweating. You get a pit in your stomach. Maybe you have a pain in your shoulders, right? It lands in your body. For other people, it starts with a thought, a fear thought. We call these ant thoughts, automatic negative thoughts. Now, we all have ant thoughts. Everybody has them. You wake up in the morning and you think, oh, it's April and it's 40 degrees out. Oh, that sets off your day. You wake up in the morning and you say, oh, today's a little dreary. However, when I look at the weather, the sun's going to be out tomorrow and the next day. We all create our own realities based on our belief systems. Pay attention to your thoughts. Pay attention to your cognitive distortions. One of the ones that a lot of folks get sort of sunk into is catastrophizing, right? Doom and gloom and everything is horrible and the glass is half empty and things will never get better, right? We can put our attention on recognizing when we catastrophize, and we can switch that thought into what's called a rational response. The weather's yucky today. I can do my laundry. Maybe I'll do some ironing. I could go grocery shopping. Maybe I'll clean the closet. What are some of the things that we can do inside? Maybe you bake cookies. Turn the oven on. Make the home warm. Right? So there are ways that we can react and respond to the things that we have no control over, right? Everything in life pretty much is the serenity prayer. 2 buckets. The things we have control over, the things that we don't. The things we have to accept and tolerate, the times and places where we have choices. Be proactive, don't be reactive in your choices, okay? So that's just a little nutshell about cognitive behavioral therapy and tuning into the emotions that come up when we have those thoughts. And in our range of emotions, right, at the end of the day, all of our emotions boil down to love and fear, right? The positive emotions all boil down to love in some form or another. The negative emotions all boil down to fear in some form or another. Which one do you choose? How do you shift out of fear and into love? That's through our thoughts. Pay attention to our thoughts, right? A lot of people get tied into words like should and never and always. Things are rarely ever always, right? Should, something's either important enough to you that you will or you won't. You did or you didn't. Same thing for other people, right? Should is very judgmental. They should. He should. They should. She should. They should. People should, right? We don't know what their life lessons are. We don't know what they've asked themselves to learn. We can observe without judging, right? Part of dialectic behavior therapy is non-judgmental observation. I'm just observing. I wouldn't choose to paint my house chartreuse. It's yellowy green. They might like that color, right? I might not choose to dress a particular way, do a particular thing, eat a particular food. There's no shoulds. People either will or they won't. I either will, I won't. Something's either so important to me that I'm going to do it, I'm not going to should. I am going to go to that wake or funeral because I care about the people who passed away. I cared about that person, right? I'm going to donate to this cause because it aligns with my belief system, right? I'm going to attend something because it's important to me, not because I should. Okay, pay attention to those words. They often tie into what's called all or nothing or black and white thinking. I either achieve my goal or I'm horrible. There's lots of shades of gray in between. So also pay attention to black and white or all or nothing thinking. Okay, so this is one way that you can self-regulate around that Aries energy with feeling frustrated and annoyed and angry, right? Pay attention to your thoughts. The next thing that we can do to self-regulate is to use breath work. So breath work, particularly around mindfulness, has been demonstrated to elicit the relaxation response, right? All those happy hormones and neurotransmitters that we talked about. And so there's some really simple things that we can do with our breath work. We can do something called box breathing, which is where we breathe in, hold it, breathe out, hold it, breathe in, hold it, breathe out, hold it. And we just keep repeating that box until we feel the relaxation response start to kick in. Another thing that we can do, and a protocol that I developed, is called rainbow breathing, where we use colors to help us self-regulate. And so I have a full protocol if you're interested. Again, message me. I can email it to you. And it's actually connected to a song called Breath by Max Harrison, which uses the colors around the breath work. It's particularly helpful, and I use it with a lot of the kiddos that I work with around teaching them to self-regulate. I'll put the link here to that song. And so what we do with rainbow breathing is we pay attention to that when we breathe in, the air is cool. So we're going to breathe in the cool colors. And when we breathe out the warm colors, right? So colors are connected to anger and frustration. Remember Mars, the red planet? I was so angry I could see red. Man, I'm heated. Right? This is how in our vernacular, intuitively, we connect color with our emotions. Yeah, I'm chill. Yeah, he's chill. That's pretty cool, right? So we use colors in those ways. So we imagine orbs of light, right? Imagine a bright blue orb of light. We breathe in that blue light, and then we breathe out the red light, right? And we just go through all the colors. We breathe in each one of the cool colors. We breathe out each one of the warm colors. Okay, that's rainbow breathing. Another thing that we can do is just using the breath to create a very, very, very long exhale. So it's through that exhale, by really squeezing that stagnant air out of our lungs, and by extending that exhale as long as we possibly can, that we're eliciting that relaxation response. So it looks like this. We breathe in, we hold, we breathe out. Really squeeze it out, okay? That is another way to elicit the relaxation response. So some other ways that we can kind of self-regulate around this angry Mars irritable energy is to do some grounding. And there are a couple different ways that we can do grounding. We can use imagery, right? So we know that the brain does not know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. There's lots of research around this. They put people in SPECT imaging machines. They shine an image through a mirror above the head. The person looks at that image, let's say it's a tree, and the technicians look at the scan of the brain. Where did the brain light up? Then they have the person close their eyes and imagine that tree. The exact same spots light up. Pretty interesting. So we have buy-in with this when it comes to negative memories, right? If I said to you right now, I want you to imagine the most humiliating thing that ever happened to you, boom, we're there. We feel awkward. We might start to sweat. We're like, oh, dread, that was horrible. I don't want to go there. The same thing is true if we go to positive. We don't think about it that way, but the brain works the exact same way. If you go to your happy place, maybe it's a room in your house, maybe it's a positive memory, maybe it's the beach or a mountaintop or watching the snow fall down on a snowy night. Whatever works for you, doesn't matter. Wherever is your happy place, use your imagery to go there, and particularly bring in all of the sensory systems. And this is where the grounding comes in. What would you see? What would you hear? What would you feel? What would you smell? What could you touch? Right? So those are some ways that we can ground in general. And if you're in a moment of really having high anxiety and panic, you can also use grounding in this way. What's the date? Where am I? Where am I sitting? What can I feel? What are 5 things I see? What are 4 things that I hear? What are 3 things that I could touch? Right? What do I smell? These are also grounding techniques that can bring you back into the moment and back into today. For those of you who are open to that, you can also use grounding by walking outside in the grass or on the ground. It needs to be natural. The beach, the sand, the ground, the grass, the dirt. It just needs to be a natural substance, right? For other people, you could sit leaning up against a tree and feel the solidness of that tree, right? Or you can imagine roots that grow out of your sacral chakra, your tailbone, and your feet, whatever works better. Some folks tell me I like the imagery of my feet. Other folks say they like the imagery of the tailbone. You can use either one. And imagine that you can send those grounding roots deep, deep, deep down into the earth, through the crust, through the soil and the rocks, through the aquifers, deep down into the ground, right? And we can release anything that doesn't serve us, mind, body, and spirit. And we can draw up all that positive earth energy, feeling grounded, protected, solid, predictable, right? And fertile. The earth is fertile. And we leave all that negative energy to be renewed, recycled, repurposed, so that the earth can use that energy to heal the planet. And we draw up that earth energy so that we can grow anything in our life where we want to use that fertile earth energy, feel grounded and solid and protected. So grounding is another way that you can practically cope with that angry, irritable, frustrating Aries energy. And lastly, one thing that I'm just going to skim the surface of, and we'll talk much more about, is something called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, or tapping. Tapping is widely used for a myriad of things connected to emotional self-regulation. It's been around for about 20 years. There's an Australian psychologist, her name is Peter Templeton, who's done lots and lots of research around EFT and tapping and how it works. Again, if you reach out, I have some handouts, I have some protocols, you could set up a session. And so the way that tapping works is that we tap on the meridians connected to and similar to acupressure, right? So it starts off with a statement, an even though statement. So even though I feel irritable, even though I feel irrational, even though my emotions are not connected in reality right now, even though I feel really off, I trust that I can self-regulate, right? So we'll shorten that. Even though I feel dysregulated and off, I trust that I can self-regulate. And then we tap on the meridians. The first meridian is the chop. The second meridian is the side of the eye. I use these two fingers, right? And we continue to repeat our even though statement. The next one is above our lip, under our nose. The next one is our chin. The next are these trigger points. If you really want to get deep, search around to find the trigger points that are tender. Eek. You'll know when you find them. They're very tender. Your even though statement. Lastly, under the arm. Sorry, not lastly. Finally, the top of the head. And you continue to repeat your if-then statement throughout these series. I was walking through the airport once on the way to a vacation, and I noticed a young woman tapping, and I thought, she probably has some strong emotions about getting on a plane. Good for her. She's using her grounding techniques. She's self-regulating. I gave her a big smile and a thumbs up, and she smiled back to me, and we had a moment of knowing, you know, what the other one was doing. And this is a very, very effective technique. So whichever one of these things work for you, these are some very practical techniques grounded in research. They are very much evidence-based that you can use while you're being influenced by that irritable, angry, cranky energy. So we talked about the tens. We talked about culminations of things. We talked about big changes that are coming for all of us, both individually, within our society, within the geopolitical system, and within the universe. And so some of these things we don't have control over. What we do have control over is, are we open to embracing change? Do we try to hold on to what is or the past? Are we open to self-regulating? And are we open to what we don't have control over, accepting what we need to accept, and making proactive and positive choices where we do have choices, and knowing the difference between the two? So thank you for listening to these videos. Thank you for liking and subscribing and commenting. Thank you to those of you who have Venmo'd and bought me coffee. And again, if these are things that you want to get a little bit more deeper into, please reach out to me to schedule a session. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and I look forward to connecting with you next time as we move on to the suit cards. So when we're talking about culminations and on to the next level is looking at the suit cards and how those influence, right? And so the suit cards are the pages and the knights, the queens and the kings, in no particular order. So again, thank you. Take good care of yourself, and we'll connect again really soon. Bye-bye.